Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's Her Story. It's so nice to see you all, and I have to say this is one of the highlights for me when we have our monthly Her Story because there's always when you hear the things that people have been enduring or overcoming or the incredible things that are out there, um, that's what really kind of gives me an inspiration and a hope that, we're doing things and we can do a lot more. And this month we have from Ireland, a very special person actually is Mary Reynolds. She's a landscape designer. She's a guardian of life and of the land. And I came across Mary's work a few years ago, and I just heard a little part of a podcast. And ever since that moment, I never forgot her because just the few words she was sharing really heightened my awareness of the life that's around us that sometimes, we're so busy in our day to day that we don't actually take a moment to see the bigger picture. So Mary is well renowned in Ireland, has a amazing following. She was one of the youngest people to win a gold medal in the Chelsea Flower Show, and I think that was the launch to her career. Since then, she's gone on to create We Are the Ark. She's written some books. She has an amazing Instagram page. She's a poet, she's a writer, she's an activist, and she's fabulous. So, without further ado, we would love to welcome you, Mary, and hear about how you got to where you are today and what you're up to. So I pass over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here. And I hope they put that on my gravestone. She was fabulous. I think that would be good enough. Thank you, Amanda. Apologies for my messy room. It was the only room that didn't look like a mess because I've just finished a design, and when I'm doing a design, everything just nothing gets done in my house until it's done. And I had a presentation this morning, so I did that, and now I have to clean up, but I haven't had a chat, so you don't want to see what's over there. Um, anyway, so um, yeah, so I guess I started off as a landscape designer, but I'll start at the beginning, and I'm not going to give you a whole run through, but there was a moment that happened when I was a young girl, and I grew up on a farm in County Wexford in the southeast of Ireland. And, my mum and dad worked full time, and they were also farming, and they had six children. So there wasn't really much time for connection. So we were basically ignored, which is wonderful. And so there was a lot of freedom in that. And um, I used to walk. There wasn't really much time for connection in the human world. So I kind of made my connections outside. And I remember one particular day I wandered off to the top of the farm, and it was May. And I know I was very young. I was between 5 and 7. That's all I remember, because I remember my legs were really chubby. And so it was kind of must have been around there. And I wandered up to this little field that I used to love at the top of the farm, and there was like a gap of about 4 meters into the ditch, and these high ditches of clay which were completely covered in hawthorns and blackthorns and gorse and brambles, and they were impenetrable. But there was a gap for my dad to get his tiny little tractor through when he needed to. And I wandered through that gap, and I knew something had changed. And I looked behind me, and the gap had completely disappeared, and there was no way out of that field, and I couldn't get out, and I know it sounds really bizarre, but there was no way out of that field. So I kind of was very frightened, and I wandered around the field for much time. Like, I probably spent the rest of the day in that field, and I was very frightened. But I eventually got distracted by the sunshine and the butterflies, and I sat down in the middle of the meadow, and I calmed down. And then I realized that I was being watched. You know that feeling? And I looked around to see who was watching me, and there was no people there, but I realized it was the plants, and the plants were looking for my attention. And, as a young child who didn't have much interaction with people, I learned to have interactions with the more than human world as such. And this is something that we can all do, but that we have forgotten how to do. So I'm not unique in any shape or form. It's just that we have learned that that is somehow not normal. And but in that moment, all that happened was, you know, I realized that all the plants had a connection through their heart, and you could they communicated through feelings. It was a feeling. I could feel them. I could feel what they were saying. I could feel all of it. And later on, some, when I eventually got out of the field, I heard a neighbor calling, um, and it broke the spell. And I didn't tell anyone about it, but I did tell my dad about it later when I was maybe 18. And he said the same thing had happened to his grandfather in that field. And it was known locally as a fairy field. And these are kind of magical spaces that, Ireland and probably the world was littered with. But as the wild places have retreated, these magical energies have retreated as well. Um, my dad later knocked down all the ditches and all the fields got blended into one to make one big field. And so that kind of magical energy disappeared. But I was writing my first book later, and I thought back to that time, and I thought about the plants, and I thought about why was this important to them to connect with me. And I realized that they wanted me to know that I was part of their family and that they were part of my family, and that the earth is one big heart. And like that heart got shattered into millions of tiny pieces the moment we started looking at the earth in terms of ownership instead of in terms of guardianship. And so each of those little pieces has different levels of damage and healing, and we all get drawn towards whichever ones are the same kind of frequency as our own. So you find that we have an opportunity to heal whatever part of the planet we live with. And you will find that in return, you kind of become healed yourself, which sounds like a strange thing to say because that's obviously a lifetime's work. But nature's time is slow time. But I'm going to back up a little bit. So obviously I forgot about all that when I discovered alcohol and parties and all the rest of it when I was a teenager. And, I kind of went wild altogether when I managed to get away from home because I didn't feel any connection to the world of farming or people there. And but what happened was that my mum, who was a very staunch Catholic and a really good mother, and she really insisted that we had to have an education. And I was the youngest of six. And so she insisted that I went to college. And it never occurred to me that I could say no to the woman. So um, I looked around and I thought, well, what am I going to study? Because I was working in a factory at the time in Dublin and things were not going to go well from there. So fair play to her. She put her foot down. And I kind of I fancied a boy who was studying landscape design in UCD in Dublin. So that was the only reason that I went to do that. It wasn't a great calling or anything. And so I went to UCD. And, within 2 weeks, that relationship had fizzled out. But I stuck the course because I didn't know what else to do. And, it took me 6 years, I think, to do a 4-year degree. And I eventually got through it and came out the other end and immediately started designing gardens. And I was good at it, it was I was creative, I was artistic, and so design was kind of easy enough. And but I kind of I slowly lost the will to live because it depended on what television program people had seen the night before as to what they wanted me to do in their gardens. And I just knew there was something seriously wrong with what I was doing, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. And this whole idea of looking at a piece of this sacred planet as a creative kind of blank palette for our endeavors was wrong. And I didn't know how to put words onto that yet. So the only thing I could think to do was to move back because I was living in the city at this point when I was young, and I was a few years into designing gardens for other people living in the city, and I thought I can't do this anymore. I was going to lose the plot. So I moved to a tiny little cottage in Wicklow, in the middle of nowhere on the edge of a village called Hollywood in West Wicklow. And, you know, almost immediately I relaxed, and I didn't, I could walk out my door and walk up into the hills and disappear. And almost the first night I moved there, I had this dream where I was a crow, and I was being a crow in the dream, and I was flying over this ancient Irish landscape. And the landscape was one that was so beautiful. It was covered in ancient oak woods, and it was mosses, and it was a patchwork of ponds, and the rivers were hopping with fish, and the air was full of birdsong and insects, and it was just so alive. And then I heard my name call my name, Mary, was being called. And so I flew down towards where I could hear it from. And it was deep in an old oak woods, the ancient oak woods which have been wiped out. And um, I flew down through these trees, and sitting on the woodland floor was me as I am now. Well, as I was then, young and fabulous. And I was painted blue for some reason. And I was sitting there with a big stick on a big log and smiling up at my crow self. And I just froze, because it was a simple thing, but I immediately knew gardens are so false, and that nature was the real deal. And what were we doing? This is just so stupid. Like, so I woke up and I thought, okay, well, how am I going to convince my clients to do something different? And because I wasn't a very kind of strong character, in that I wasn't very designery, in that I couldn't really force people to do what I wanted, I kind of just went along with whatever they wanted, you know. So I thought, well, they wouldn't let me do what I wanted. They just laughed at me, which is fair enough. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to try and show people that there's a different way of doing things. So I thought, look, I'll go to a kind of a garden show. So I went to the Chelsea Flower Show, and I thought, okay, this is something that creates fashions. So I applied to the Chelsea Flower Show, and I said, I rang the RHS one morning and I said, look, would you give me an application form to go to put a garden into your show? And this was 2001 at this point. And I got through to a guy who very rightly, in retrospect, said, not a hope. We're going to send you a form, because we don't know who you are, and we have to make sure that people only come here to do that have the ability to pull this off. And I was a young woman from Ireland with absolutely no experience, so of course they weren't going to send me an application form. Like, why would they? But it didn't occur to me to be sensible about it, so I kept ringing him back, and eventually he said, okay, I'll send you an application form. But basically he was lying just to get me off his back. And so I was waiting for this form to come through, and it never came through. So I eventually kept ringing, and it kept saying it had come through. And then eventually I rang back one Thursday morning, and I got a hold of a secretary who was very kind. And the rest of them were out at lunch. And she said, oh, those forms were sent out 8 weeks ago. And your design and, proof of full sponsorship, which is like $250,000, is due back in on Monday. And I lied and said, oh, I have all of that. And so I I did the design over the weekend, and I forged the sponsorship documents from an obscure company in Beirut that a friend had a connection to. And I thought, surely this will work. I couriered it back over, and it went straight through to the judging panel, and they let me through. And suddenly I had to find $250,000 without the RHS, the Royal Horticultural Society, finding out that I actually didn't have it. Anyway, it became a massive story, but I won't go into the whole story. But basically, it did work. I did get the money. I ended up in Ethiopia in the middle of that story, trying to I had fallen in love with a boy who I was convinced that I couldn't do this work without, which is just rubbish. But in my head, that was the excuse. I chased him to Ethiopia. But while I was in Ethiopia, I was in a tiny little town called Lalibela, which is like up in the mountains in Ethiopia. And it completely changed my life, because I saw such suffering and degradation of people and land that I came back completely changed. And I'm lucky because, if I hadn't have had that experience, I might have decided that I was absolutely fabulous and become a designer who was, who got lost in that world of fame and rubbish. Um, and I'm very blessed that I had that experience because I have never felt anything but gratitude since then for my life and everything that we have, and how important it is that we need to fix everything everywhere, because otherwise none of it matters. If there's still one person in the world living with that level of poverty, we are screwed. Like, so we do have to fix it all. And so I learned so much through that. And then I went, what happened? Oh, so I ended up working all around the world because I was the youngest woman to ever win a gold medal at the Chelsea Flower Show. And I think I still hold that record, but there's been younger men since. But it was the first time an Irish person had won that. So it became quite a big deal. And I got work all over the world. And it was fabulous. Like, it was great. And I was designing wild gardens, basically, wild gardens. But there was still something wrong. And then I ended up living in West Kerry, um, and everything went downhill because I ended up having two babies and I ended up on my own very, very quickly. And just, I had no support and life became very difficult. And so I was living in this beautiful place with no money and very little work, and I didn't know how to manage. And then somebody made a movie about my story, and so I decided to try and write a book to go with that film, to try and make enough money to keep me and the kids going. And instead of writing a book, I wrote myself out of a job altogether because I realized that the work I was doing wasn't good enough. I wasn't doing anything it was better, but it wasn't enough. And then I started writing about, am I going too long here? No, I'm okay so far. I've got another few minutes. So I started writing about, the first book I wrote was called The Garden Awakening. And um, it was about, the old ways of working with land and the magic of nature and our our lost memory of connection and deep reflection of the health of the earth. And it really, I learned an awful lot in writing that book. And then that was great and everything, and it did change my work. But then I was sitting at my desk in 2018 in the winter looking down over my lawn, and the kids had gone to school, and I had moved back to the county I live in now. I was, my parents were sick and I'd moved back, and I was looking, helping look after them, and I was planning to build a house on the family farm for me and the kids. And I was sitting at the desk looking down over the lawn, and a fox ran past, and it was morning and it was winter, and there was two hares chasing that fox. And I thought, well, that's weird. And they ran into the brambly patch, and I was looking at the bramble patch to see where they're going to come out again, and I saw a hedgehog chasing them. And I thought, well, now that's very strange because they should all be asleep and they certainly wouldn't be out at this time of the day or the winter or whatever. And so I went in the opposite direction to see what was going on. And at the end of my lane, which was a country lane, I was renting that house at the time to get this whole thing together that I live in now. And at the end of that lane, on the far side of this tiny little country road was this beautiful thicket of a field, and it was full of hawthorns and blackthorns and brambles and wild roses, and it was an emergent woodland, and it was impenetrable, and it was about an acre. And I loved it because it had a strong energy. But somebody had got planning permission to build a house at the top of that acre. And then within minutes, they had gone in with a digger and they'd cleared the whole thing out to make a garden without any thought for the creatures that called it home. And all of a sudden, I realized this is how we're losing nature, is patch by patch. We are losing nature patch by patch, and everybody is waiting for someone else to fix it. And all of us are responsible for removing it. And so I went back inside and I started learning about the collapse of biodiversity. I started learning about how this is reflected all over the world, and how devastating it is for all of us to have lost our understanding of how abundant this planet used to be, like that crow version of me in the dream saw. And now, because of shifting baseline syndrome, we don't realize how little we have and how degraded our land is, how degraded water, our rivers, everything has lost its abundance. And that abundance was gifted to us by the earth, and we have pushed it away in return for convenience. And you know, it is extremely upsetting, and the pain of it can break you. But it's our job to feel that pain and to break through to the other side and to see that we can fix this. Like, that's our job. Like, so the thing that's really important is that there is hope. And I started this movement called We Are the Ark, which is acts of restorative kindness to the earth, in case anyone thought it was religious, because it's not. And it's just this is an idea of how all of us have the opportunity to create a patchwork of healed pieces of Mother Earth that hopefully will connect up at some point to create, you know, a blanket of hope. And it's something that everyone can do, because what can individuals do? Like, we've been offered the most ridiculous things to do. Like, recycling is not a solution. Like, that is holding the plastic industry, in full bloom, really. Really, that we need to stop using plastics at source, not recycling. Only 9% of plastics are recyclable anyway, and most of it ends up in the sea. Like, I mean, we have to stop thinking that the solutions we're being offered are solutions, because they're not. I mean, like, all of these things, like, if you look at electric cars, the weight of the machines on the tires, the tires that are breaking down because the machines are heavier, and the oxidization of that rubber that runs into the water and pollutes the streams. I mean, there's so much in the solutions we're being offered that is not real. But this is one that is an actual solution, is to take any patch of land you have under your care and reweave the native plant communities back into it. And you can do that in such a way that humans are a very important part of that reweaving, and you can create the most beautiful living landscapes where almost immediately all these incredible creatures and insects will come back. And it's so much more beautiful than a garden, right? Because rather than just looking out at this still life painting, which is what gardens often are, you have this thriving, hopping, moving patch of hope. And it's so exciting, and it doesn't have to cost anything. And even if you only have a window box, you can be part of this solution. And it weaves communities together. And all I ask people to do is to take half of any land you have under your care and restore it back to native plants. And you can still make it beautiful, and you can still have all different layers, and you can have areas for people and all that kind of thing. And then the other half, to grow your own food, because the food system is killing everything on the planet. And you know, we have to change it from the ground up. And so I want, if you've more than enough land to grow food, if you're physically not able to grow food, whatever it is, share that bit of land with friends, neighbors, family who have no access to land to grow food, and build communities around growing food. And so this whole movement is about building community on all levels. And it's so exciting. And it actually turns people into activists from gardeners. Suddenly they're activists because they go out into their communities and they see all these spaces which are completely just lost opportunities, that we have been told that tidiness equates with care. But caring for the earth is not keeping it tidy. It's about restoration and helping her support life so that we can continue to live here. Anyway, so maybe I'll stop talking now, Amanda.
Mary, thank you so much. Your words are they just go straight into my heart. And you're just
I'm
such a joy
fabulous,
to me.
fabulous,
You are
Amanda.
fabulous. But seriously, I'm sure I don't know what everyone else feels out there, but I know myself, I feel the pain almost myself. I can't I'm finding it difficult to ignore things or, comfortably numb myself down. and then you're trying to think you can't act like this. You're like a lunatic going around the place. You can't, what is this? What is, are we really at this existential crisis moment? And I'm sorry to say, but I
Yes.
think we are,
Yeah.
like and also look what it could be. I want to be in your dream. I want to be flying. I want to see those ancient woodlands,
I know.
that communication that we're missing, even if we touch our plants, we know now with science is catching up, they're sentient beings. They have
Yeah.
a consciousness, they have an awareness and a wisdom and a knowledge there. And this is what's exciting and I know earlier we were talking about hope. So I know there's a lot of things that we can do, and I don't want to keep talking. So I would love to pass it out there to you. If anyone has any questions or would like to say anything to Mary, please, now's your chance.
Thanks, Amanda.
I'd like to say something.
Hi, Mitty.
Hi,
Mm.
Mary. I was so moved, especially when you started to talk about crows, because I love crows actually. They're kind of my little favorite birds, even though they've got this kind of symbol of not being so gracious or something. But I love them
Oh,
because
me too. Yeah.
their natures are so giving actually and so beautiful. And they have one partner and they love and they take care of the children. When you started to speak about crows, I stood up. I thought, oh yes, I really get. And then you had me actually from that moment on.
Oh, that's
It
wonderful.
was so moving actually. I really felt, yeah, yeah. Let's do something for nature and let's be one with nature because that's how we are created. Actually, it's true that we try to tend to make everything look too pretty and too set in its way, but nature has its own way of showing beauty, and just to help it along with our hands, and our hearts. So thank you so much. I think I could have listened to you for even longer.
Thank you. Thank
You've
you.
got a very beautiful way of expressing it, and I kind of understand when you went to Ethiopia and you had that impactful experience. It kind of steers you up to go a little step deeper and to think about the alleviation of poverty of others, and the difficulties of other people who are going through and how blessed we are. And we have the tools and we have the opportunities to make a difference, actually. And I think that can be a very important driving force for what we do. So, yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm very much looking forward to learning more from you, Mary.
Oh,
Mm.
Mitty. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Mitty. Yeah, and it just shows us as well that when you start to think about, especially when you see treacherous situations, you realize actually all of our problems just kind of evaporate.
Mm.
So anything that you were thinking someone pulled in front of you in the car or whatever it is, it's irrelevant really. And then if it isn't us, to be able to start some momentum, to start something going, then who's it going to come? And that's why we need the women at the level of policy making. So,
That's one
we
more thing I wanted to say. During the COVID period, because our life is a fast-paced life, before the COVID. But when the COVID hit, everyone was insulated. They had to go into their homes, and the only place they could really experience something of nature was in their gardens.
Mm,
So myself, I kind of retuned into growing things. Before I would never grow anything. So I learned how to grow tomatoes and potatoes and things like that. So it's an interesting experience to take care of nature and to take care of your food supplies.
Yeah.
I was really, yeah, so there's so many bonuses and deeper understanding of it's us really. We're the owners in a sense of taking care, like stewards, having stewardship over nature in a good sense. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's also quite shocking how much work it is to grow food
mm,
enough to
mm,
not need to go to a shop is
mm.
some undertaking, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I think having a good community around us, like neighborhoods, if we could share our goods, some may have good crops and the others may not, but if we could share it. I think in the old days, my mum would always cook extra food
Yeah.
and she'd go and share it with the neighbors, even if they wanted it or not, but she just felt that the desire to give, you know. So
Good for her. Great,
Yeah.
great.
We're coming full circle back into those realizations. I think there are many people moving and waking up looking for some other alternative. Is there anyone else out there with any questions?
It's me, Renu.
Hi,
Hi,
Rainy.
Mary. It's
Hi.
absolutely such a big joy to hear you.
Thank
You got me to a world which has always been in my dream. And I live in India and I can frequently travel to the UK. And one of the biggest reason for me, other than my daughter being there, is nature. Because I don't get enough of nature in India as we are very highly populated. And one thing that, when you were talking about the crow story, and I was just sitting in the meadow and enjoying the breeze, one thing that I often do when I'm out in nature is to just hug a tree. I don't know what power it gives me, what comfort or what solace I get in, but I think nature has the ability to absorb so much of our things into it and give everything good in return. So the worries, the fears, the anything, any small worry, I think the nature has the ability to absorb it. So when I was listening to you, I just felt, God, just take me out of this room and put me back in nature. I don't like sitting here anymore. So it was really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
You're so welcome. And can I just say that there's this wonderful mystic called John Moriarty from Ireland who I just adore. And he sadly died in, I think, 2009, maybe. But he always said that all ground is sacred ground. Whether you're in, he used to say it like whether you're in the rubbish tips of Dublin or, you know, the wild west of Ireland, every patch of ground is Mother Earth's ground, like, and it can all be loved and cared for.
Yes.
So even if you're standing on concrete, it's nothing to her, like, you know. And those connections you're talking about with trees. I mean, I was talking to a lady um this morning about this. There's so much information now where you know, science is catching up with stuff that we all really know ourselves deeply, like hugging trees. I
Yeah.
mean, the trees are just as sentient as we are, and they so appreciate the attention and the love. And, you know, there's so much to be gained on both sides of that relationship, like you say. You're so right. I mean, I have a tree on my land which I call him Kevin, and he's a pine tree, and it's a native Scots pine to Ireland. And when I started planting trees, he was the one for some reason that I used to talk to most. And I recognized eventually that Kevin was way bigger than all the other trees because he got all the attention. And, you know, this is now something that many people have noticed that, you know, nature loves our attention, like, and it's not that we're some kind of god to nature. It's just, you know, it's the other way around. Like we have made nature serve us for way too long now. It's our job to serve nature, like, and to throw love and affection and gratitude back into that system as much as possible, because if we don't, we won't have a future here, you know. Not, and it's so easy to fix. Like the speed of recovery in nature is unbelievably fast, because when biology is restored, the speed of recovery, when we stop thinking we know better, like, you know, there's so many different. I get such a hard time from the gardening industry. You know, they really do not appreciate what I'm saying. And there are so many narratives out there that you need to plant pollinator-friendly non-native flowers to help the insects, or, that you need to put in the non-native flowers to bridge gaps for the insects, or you need to plant, as if nature hasn't sorted out all those timings and relationships with her own communities. I mean, how thick do you think we are, But unfortunately, most people who don't think about it, they take the narratives on board and they think they're being part of the solution by putting those plants in their gardens without the understanding that a lot of the time, these plants, if they haven't been grown organically, are a toxic soup of chemicals to the insects that they're supposed to be helping. There's so much wrong with who is gaining from these narratives, that's the thing we always have to ask, and like the only chance we have, looking around these days, I don't know, was it you who mentioned this to me recently, Amanda? All of the native plant communities, there's no death, there's no drought to be seen in them here anyway, but all the garden plants are dying off, and we have to stop seeing, what I'm always saying to people is that we're still living in this colonial mindset where, we think it's okay to colonize our patches of the planet by pushing out all the natives and importing things that we think are pretty, as if that's somehow more important than supporting nature to support us, So we have to decolonize every patch of this planet, every heart, every mind. We have to go back to stepping into our original roles on this planet, which is one of caretaker. So we have to become the spider at the center of the web of life and reweave it all back together. And the thread with that web is the native plants. It's the foundation stone of all life on the planet. And we have to reweave it all back together. And that's working with the seed bank. That's taking out the non-natives. We have a lot of hard work to do, but we have to do it. And it's bountiful work. And it fills your heart with joy. And it actually gives you hope. And that's invaluable, especially in the world of environmental activism, because all it is hopelessness and anger and fear. And none of that is bringing us anywhere. Nobody is getting anywhere with that. So this brings you somewhere. And, I'm not gaining anything from this. This is just because I feel absolutely responsible for every patch of this planet, the same way anybody else who cares does. It hurts when someone sprays chemicals down the road to kill off the weeds. It hurts me physically, but I have to take on that pain and keep going because that's our job. And it's a very difficult time to be alive, but we are alive and we have enough food. We have everything we need right now. We may not all be well, but we're still here and we have to keep going, And so every tree that we can love, every insect that we can take care not to step on, every single creature on this planet has to be treated as a god. And we have to start to take care of them. And then we have some chance. We have hope, and the speed of recovery is phenomenal. We can do this, we can do this, but we need all of us, and I really think it's the women that are going to do this work. I think because the earth is the embodiment of the feminine energy. And the earth is sick of being treated and only being valued for being pretty or productive. And women are the same. We've had enough of it, And so we have to shift it.
We've got to shift it.
Yeah.
Actually,
you're so right, Mary. I mean, it's 11 o'clock in India. It's 11 p.m. here.
Oh, my
But I
goodness.
think I'm going to sleep with some ideas that I can start tomorrow itself. How little or how big I can contribute.
Excellent.
I think my tomorrow morning is going to be very different from today's morning.
Oh,
So thank you
wow.
very
That's
much.
wonderful. Oh, it's so wonderful. You've made my day. And we have,
Thank you so much.
I have, a website where as much as like all the information is free. That's the wearetheark.org. And there's also a book, but you can just buy, don't worry about buying the book. Just get it from your local library so that other people can get it, Um, and that's really simple, and it kind of is supposed to be global. Like it's supposed to kind of, but your own ecosystems will be specific to you, and you'll have to learn your plants. And it's so exciting, like when you start to do this work, it really is. Yeah. So thank you. That's wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Anyway, I think as well, maybe we shouldn't underestimate the power of a conversation or the power that and also you particularly, Mary, I know you've a massive following on Instagram, and it has such an impact on people. I don't know if you're even aware
I'm not
how it
really.
really
Don't.
I know I keep saying how great you're, but you're thinking, no, I don't know why you think that. But I think it's because when something is really authentic and genuine and comes from us, it resonates and it goes deep, deep inside because we are, as you say, made up of the same thing. I saw someone on Instagram, a mushroom guy, and he was saying, don't be down. We're all the same. Everything that's outside, we have inside. And he was going on his little trip down the garden trying to lift us up because actually all the things that you said, which are relevant for plants and the fact that it can come back so quickly. And, we have to maybe check our idea. What is beauty? What are we, what's our influence, or why do we think something is beautiful? And again, if you look at women are in the same position, and we're trying to be beautiful and to be, and maybe is that really the standard of beauty? What is beauty? And the true beauty for me is the thing that actually you can't make money on. So nobody's going to be selling that. But your essence, your soul, your energy, your serving, your spark, your authenticity, all of these great things that we're missing out on because we're isolated from one another. And I think the system is the thing deliberately doing that, but we're not taking it anymore. We're gonna shake it up. And you're just a joy. And also I know some of the ladies couldn't be here. We have such a network of women, and from nuclear scientists, educators, politicians, the most amazing women that I think honestly we could really be causing a stir, and we'd be having great fun at the meantime. We could be hugging each other and hugging the trees. Listen, is anyone else out there with something to share with Mary? Oh, hello, hello, Heidi.
Yes, I want to thank you very much. You expressed it very nicely and very good. And I would say also that gardening or being put in a garden is so rewarding. Even it's a lot of work, but you cannot stop because you get so much out from it. And I think it's the best medicine also for depression. If someone has depression and you put him or she in the garden, he feels ownership. He feels he can give, he's loved by the nature and he can do a lot in the garden. He's out in the nature, sun, air, feels the sunlight. So it's the best medicine. This I wanted to share also. Thank you.
True, Heidi. Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi. Anyone else with a question? I know that before we came online, we were talking about things of hope. And do you have some inspiring things that you're looking at these days, Mary, that you think, oh my God, that's really something?
Well, any of the ecosystem restoration work is inspiring, and it's all groups of people that are just buying land together or volunteering, or like I was telling Amanda and Mitty about this wonderful project by an amazing guy called John Liu, who he's a documentary maker, but he spent 25 years restoring an area the size of Belgium in China, and it went from being, completely degraded desert, mountain, dead land to being the most lush, productive, beautiful place. And they did it like with the people there, and that's the key thing I learned from ecosystem restoration, is that you can't go in and save any place or people. You have to support people to do the work within their own communities, or else it just falls apart. And like, this whole narrative from the agricultural industry that we have to feed the world and therefore we have to keep going. All you have to say to them is absolutely wrong. That's a colonial way of thinking. What we need to do is to support the world to feed themselves. And every patch of this earth has a different food system that we need to give them back and support them to rebuild in their own communities. And everything else is just somebody's making profit from it. Like, that's not the way forward. And like I was saying to the ladies as well earlier, like, all of us feel so isolated and so broken. And like you say, Amanda, the system wants us to feel like that. But there are so many of us. There are so many of us who care. And even though you might think a lot of people don't care, I think you used a term earlier called comfortably numb. Amanda, where I think a lot of people are doing that because nobody is offering them anything that will give them any sense of hope. So why would they do anything but try and shut down and keep going? Like, because recycling is not going to help them. Or, the things when there's so much wrong, like, how is that going to help? And going on protests doesn't work because, let's face it, they don't make any difference anymore. And I'm not saying that we don't protest, but I think there has to be new ways of going at this, because we like you say, we are in an existential crisis. Like, so what way are we going to do this? Are we going to keep doing the things that never worked or haven't been working for a long time, or are we going to try and do something different? And all of the changes, the greatest changes in the world, have come from small groups of passionate people that have started change from the ground up. And that's all of us and all of our communities. And every one of us has a different way of going at this, and they're all valid. As long as your intention is high and pure and good, it'll all work, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, thanks. It's again, I think we shouldn't underestimate the power that we have, or just the network of things that we have, in a day, the people that we speak to, or our window boxes, or whatever the case may be, it really it moves through people. And I can see, the conversations I've been having a lot recently, particularly. Well, I'm very inspired by Mary's, but particularly her work, ARC, Acts of Restorative Kindness. So I'm thinking that's actually what's missing a bit. We're missing a bit of kindness. We've all been we're going through so many things at the moment as well, and there isn't enough kindness. Just a little bit of kindness actually can switch everything and can move everything. And there's recently there's a company in Dublin, I don't know if you know them, Mary, called the Gnomes. They're these little guys. They in one part of the university, DCU, I think, they did their own little business, and they used the ground there, and they're growing micro herbs because they're so nutrient dense and they're amazing, and there's a quick, turnover. But instead of using hydroponics and the water, they realize, the most important thing is the soil. We really want to take care of the soil. We really have to make sure that the soil quality is good. When we grow these microherbs within this soil, then, you have this really very high nutrient dense, delicious microherbs you can put on all of your foods. They have a system, and they send out these microherbs to people. So I love it because they're so cute. They send me little emails now and again, or a link to something environmental online, or, and they sent me one yesterday, an email, and it said it's a generic email to their customers, but it says the person's name. Hi, Amanda. We just haven't heard from you for a while. We just wanted to ask you, how are you? And then there was a gap and another thing. No, genuinely, we'd like to know how you are. And then warm regards from Marty and the team. So he probably regretted sending me such an email because I thought, come here to me, Marty, till I tell you how I am. And anyway, I wrote a big thing. Well, I'm burdened that we're in the middle of an existential crisis, that nobody's connecting. Anyway, and then I said, I really appreciate actually the work that you're doing, the effort you're taking care of your customers, the way you're trying to serve us with this nutritious what are they called? Microgreens. And I don't know, I haven't checked if they replied. They probably thought, don't ask her anymore. But these little startups or these young guys actually they've woken up to something, and there's something else that's starting to emerge that is a circular economy that I really appreciate. At the moment, I'm in the city, so I don't have time or space to maybe do those things, and they're putting in all the effort. So I'm so happy to order from them and support that. And it's people as well. When I think of you, Mary, with your amazing poetry, um, I just want to go and buy you're gorgeous. Mary gifted me one of her poems. And it's so beautiful. And if I want to give a gift to someone, I really want to put my money where my heart is. I want to support people like you, like the little gnomes guys, like people who are maybe going a hard way because, we know this isn't really the profitable way, being kind to one another. Growing our own veg and taking care of our own patch doesn't really go down well with the
No,
multi markets out there.
no, it doesn't. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's beginning. It's beginning. So Mary was saying, patch by patch. And I was thinking, yeah, patch by patch. And also then we do person by person. And then once we start our web and we connect with each other, because I know everyone on this call or who will watch it later, I know we're here because we care. We know this isn't good. We're not okay with this. We want to see a change. And then we realize, well, who are you expecting to drop from the sky to do it? It has to come through us. And maybe we think we don't have the skills or the this or whatever it is. But actually, as a little community or, with each other, we do have the skills and we do have the power. So,
Thanks, Amanda.
okay, listen, ladies, you've been very quiet today. It's your own fault.
Oh, it's been really lovely. I really enjoyed
Yeah.
talking to you. And, I talked to two people. I'm delighted to have a group of women here who are clearly interested and lovely. And I really appreciate you all taking time out of your evenings or your mornings or whatever. Thank you.
Yeah. So just before we wrap it up as well, I know some of us on here are going to Malta in November. I know there's our annual conference, and I'm so glad Mary's going to come and is going to be
Yes.
speaking. Woohoo!
Mm.
Must
Amanda
be.
gave me her slot. I mean, honest to God, how
I
cool is
would have
that?
been speaking about you, so better that you speak. So it's I'm really feeling, do you know what, we can do something. I know we're going to be meeting Mary and myself and meet some others. And there's some amazing women in Ireland, aren't there, Mary? Honestly, Europe better watch out. So we'll figure out something here. And then we were really thinking about the water actually.
Yeah.
Mm.
And since we had a conversation, Mitty was mentioning for her, water security is something that really that's on her mind, her heart, that you can't imagine not having water. And then the more that we think about water, actually, water is, since the beginning of time, is being recycled through us. So when you think of it, what is water? And again, there's new science who are looking into the properties of water. And again, maybe we should take a moment to think about this, because maybe there's magical things around us, but we're not open to explore it, or maybe have a listen or a think about it. So I think with all of our mythology around the world as well, we treat water as a sacred thing in blessings or sacred wells, or the Moana for the ones with the kids. So I don't know what we're brewing, but we're brewing something, aren't we, Mary?
Totally. Yeah, we're going to change the world through the women and the water. That's our plan.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. Yes.
So listen, I just want to thank you all today. You've been very well behaved. Nobody's saying anything. There's no I think.
Well, she has given me anyway a lot to think about, or I've been reminded about, I grew up on a farm, and it was just, I really moved away from, uh, it was like that. I could, I experienced so much oneness with both with nature and the animals and everything, and sorry. Yeah, I have forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Well,
wonderful that you've remembered.
thank you for reminding me.
That's wonderful because all of us have forgotten, and it's all that matters, that deep connection with the one mother that we all share, that's so important and so nourishing. And my goodness, like it brings you so much joy and health, and there's nothing like it, like. And it's not like nature is always kind, it's wild and it's dangerous sometimes, and it's not always kind, but underneath it all is everything, like everything that we are within ourselves. And Jesus, sure, aren't we blessed, like, to be here and to be living through it, like, yeah. So I'm delighted that you remembered something important. That's wonderful.
Well, yeah, it's wonderful. Also, we've only got the one life, ladies, as far as I know. And as far as I know, I think we're all still gonna die until the whatever AI or something implants keeps us living for whatever. But hopefully not. But I think, why aren't we a little bit wilder? I think we need a bit of wild Mary. Mary, what are we doing? Why are we obeying the system? Why are we not, I think we need to, not in a aggressive way, of course, but I think, we need to, let's see what we can do.
Yeah, agree. Yeah.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you so much, Mary. You're a star. And listen, we'll see you all soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Mary, thank you.
Bye, Fishy. Bye, everyone. Thank you.